Hi, everyone. I want to go over writing effective thesis statements with you today. So you're going to have 4 essays over the course of the semester, and for every essay, you need a thesis statement. You probably know a little bit about thesis statements, and different instructors have different ways of teaching them. So I want to go over how we're going to be working on them in this class. But as you probably know, a thesis statement is the main point of your essay. But then there's some guidelines that we're going to start using. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And some of the stuff, I do talk about in the handout part of the lecture. So we'll talk about that. But I think a couple of really important things that you want to know about writing thesis statements in this class. One, for this class, it's going to be 1 sentence and 1 complete sentence, and it will be the last sentence of the introduction. So you'll have your introduction, you'll have your attention grabber, and then the very last sentence is going to be the thesis statement of whatever essay you write. The other important thing that I think you want to know is that a thesis statement always has an opposing viewpoint. It's arguable. So a thesis is never just a fact, like the sky is blue, right? That's just a fact. You don't have to prove it. There's no discussing it. It's just what it is. It has to have something that other people have a different opinion about. So you're trying to point out or prove why your point should be heard. So that's a really big element to the thesis statement. So one thing that I think is really helpful to work on with your thesis statements, or to know, first of all, your thesis is never an announcement. I think in some maybe high school classes or something, some teachers want you to say, in this essay, I will discuss blah, blah, blah. We don't do that in academic MLA format. So you wouldn't say, in this essay, I will discuss the death penalty. First of all, you never want to say I in an essay anyway, unless the specific essay specifically calls for like a personal reflection. Your first essay is a reflective essay, so you can use I. But the rest of the essays for this class, you will not be using the pronoun I or we or you. But you also want your point to be assertive. And so another thing, you couldn't say a fact like the death penalty is a form of punishment in the United States, right? Because that is also a fact. So we already know that. There's nothing to prove about that either. So you have to start thinking about, well, what do you want to say about the death penalty? You could say, you can't say, I think the death penalty should be abolished, because you've got I in there, right? So you want to take out the I think and just say the death penalty should be abolished. There you go. Now, the reason you want to take out I think is when you write the death penalty should be abolished, I already know that's what you think. So you don't have to say it. And this way it sounds more assertive. It has kind of an academic feel to it. And this thesis is okay. I wouldn't call it, like an A+ thesis, right? So a really strong thesis will often sort of have a plan or let you know. I mean, the death penalty should be abolished is really broad. I know you're going to be writing about why you think the death penalty should be abolished, but why not narrow that down some and say the death penalty should be abolished because it unfairly targets the poor and minorities. Okay, now I know what the focus of the paper is really going to be about. You're going to be talking about discriminatory practices in our justice system that specifically relate to poor people or minorities. So that would be, this thesis statement right here would really be one that is a solid thesis. I know the direction of the paper. You know, sometimes students want to make kind of a surprise at the end. In an academic paper, there's no surprise. I need to know up front what point you're making and what you're going to be arguing in your thesis. So those are some important things. A couple other things, and I talk about this in the handout too, but I think it helps to get a couple of examples. You never ask a question. A thesis is never a question. It's the answer to your question. You would never say, why should America abolish the death penalty? That's definitely a no-no, right? You just want to say America should abolish the death penalty because of A, B, and C. So never make it a question. The other thing, and this one's a little bit harder to grasp, is the death penalty is not conventional wisdom, meaning it's stuff that we already know. Most of us already know, like eating fruits and vegetables is one of the best ways to get healthy, right? I would say that is somewhat arguable. A lot of people might say, you know, well, no, exercise is a better way to get healthy, right? But still, this is conventional wisdom. Most of us know, most reasonable people know, having a healthy diet, eating fruits and vegetables is a really great way to get healthy. So you don't want to have that kind of thesis statement either. Another example of conventional wisdom would be, and I give this one in the handout, is exercise is good for you. Actually, you don't want to have you, so good for the body, right? Yeah, I think most people are going to agree that exercise is good for you. There's really nothing, there's no opposing viewpoint there. Sure, there are a few people that exercise is not good for because of certain health conditions, right? But for the most part, you know, most reasonable people agree. And that's why, you know, some of the topics like, you know, poverty or homelessness, like homelessness is a major problem in Southern California. That's a fact. It's conventional wisdom. So, you know, that does not make a good thesis statement. You have to tell us more about that. Maybe you're going to write about ways to alleviate homelessness or something. You know, the same goes, I'll see things like, you know, domestic abuse, you know, women, you know, face major problems in domestic abuse. And it's like, right, so that's true. So you want to stay away from conventional wisdom. You want to stay away from facts, and you want to stay away from questions. And you also want to stay away from the old pros and cons. right? Like there are negatives and positives about exercising. Not only is that conventional wisdom, it's a fact, right? Maybe you're going to ache after you do a lot of exercising. So that might be a negative, but so, saying there's good and bad to something does not make a very good thesis statement at all. Even if you say like the negatives outweigh the positives and stuff, those are really poorly thought out thesis statements and don't make really strong ones. So you want to stay from the whole negatives and positives things. And so those are the main ideas that I wanted to talk about in writing a thesis statement. So read after you finish watching this video, also read the handout on it. And then there's a little quiz about writing effective thesis statements. And let me know if you have any questions.